Hello and welcome to Covendom, our live podcast filmed in our studio in New Orleans at Hex Old World Witchery. This is a podcast about Alexandrian and Gardnerian British traditional witchcraft. We are your hosts, the leader of our coven in New Orleans, Brian Kane, the leader of our second Alexandrian coven in New Orleans, Levi Rowland, Ellie Barnes, the high priestess of the New Orleans coven with Brian Kane.
Also a leader.
I'm a leader. And we are in season 7.
Season 6.
6, episode 10. And please watch us on YouTube, like our show, and subscribe to our show in Hex Education, our YouTube channel. We're also can be viewed on Facebook. Today, our ambush interviewer is Shelby Quave, and he is a priest in the Alexandrian tradition, and I want to add that he is a devoted student and devoted to the goddess in really authentic ways. He's also a manager at Hex Old World Witchery, and he knows a lot about our products, herbs, stones, magical implements, tarot cards, all the books we carry. He's a great go-to when you need information about what you need for your witchcraft practice. We have Levi doing news today, and we do have some important news messages, and then we're going to have Brian do our occult demo. And I just had also on my own thinking today, let's all remember to give thanks for our lovely lives. It is not the case around the world that everyone has a lovely day today. There's been a lot of stresses in the world. So always remember thankfulness for your lovely life. Talk to the gods, thank them, and figure out what you can do for service, while you're at it. Besides drinking wine, because that's really important too.
Supporting an entire ancient industry.
Mm-hmm. Yes, blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed
You
be.
look in my eyes, or it's 7 years.
Oh, it's bad luck if you don't.
Bad sex.
Very specific. Okay, we all look
That's
a little.
apparently the Italian.
It's like this is when you're toasting after a pack of cigarettes. Middle of the night. So I am doing the news today, and of course, the biggest one I want to start with is something related to the Los Angeles fire. I want to start by saying, of course, the most tragic thing that's coming out of this is the loss of life and the loss of property. There's an enormous loss. It's sort of wild to see just how many acres have actually been taken in Los Angeles County, which is enormously populated. Los Angeles is the second most populated city in the United States.
Right.
But for us who are in the esoteric and the occult world, some news that came out of it that was pretty devastating was the absolute destruction of the Theosophical Society's library and archives in Los Angeles. If you've ever watched the show or you follow my socials, I can be very critical sometimes of the Theosophical Society, but this is not a time to sort of think about, who cares what's burned. It's a big deal for religious studies, for esoteric studies. There's been a lot of famous scholars posting about this, like Walter Hanegraaff, who is, a titan in esoteric studies. Tons of unpublished letters between Blavatsky and other major occult leaders have been lost. Gifts that were given to the Theosophical Society by religious dignitaries, including the King of Siam, what became Thailand, Buddhist scriptures, Hindu scriptures that are very ancient. Only a portion of their collection was fully digitized, as we know of right now. That might, there's new information coming out all the time, so check what I'm saying with the news. But it's a huge loss. It's a massive loss for the occult world. Regardless of what you do or what your magic is, I guarantee you, whether you like it or not on some level, you have been touched by the Theosophical Society. So it's a big deal to see just the amount of sheer loss that this is for the community. Again, acknowledging that the human loss is always greater. Another thing I wanted to bring up a little lighter is, excitingly, Byron Ballard, Byron Ballard, who is a friend of, Hexfest and is taught there, and she teaches at WitchCon often. Her new book is available, A Feral Church. I actually got the privilege of reading an advanced copy of it to do a blurb. It is a phenomenal selection of meditations to sort of ground you in goddess worship and to bring you back to a more wild and primal connection to divinity. It is beautiful, but
it's a great name.
Now. It's a great name for a book. Yeah, I love the name. But the work behind it is phenomenal. And if you've never read anything by her, I highly recommend that you do. The next thing I had on the list two things really are more political in nature. The first is, with the upcoming Trump presidency, there's a huge push to reintegrate the Bible into public schools in this country across a lot of states. Oklahoma's been in the news a lot about this, but it's happening in multiple districts. This is frightening for some level because we now have a court system that is somewhat amenable to this, which is pretty horrifying. I do think that we're going to see...
Do you mean it's like stacked and not fair?
I mean, could you imagine?
Well, Louisiana schools now
The Ten Commandments.
post the 10 Commandments. Are they required to, or they may
I think
post
they're
them? I
required.
think they're required. It's still under debate with the Supreme Court, but it's not looking good.
No. And so if you are somebody who cares about this, contact the ACLU, contact local representation, think about it more deeply. I do think we're going to see a growth of bullying again towards children who come from sort of non-traditional religious homes or atheist homes. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a huge rise in that in the next 4 years.
I mean, what if all that talk about white Christian nationalism was real?
I know, right? It's happening.
that be
It's happening right in front of us,
strange?
people.
Well, they're already starting the anti-gay marriage thing. Idaho's the first one to make a move. We
Yep.
knew somebody was going to do it, but Idaho's already making a move.
We're going to see it get a little bit more heated. Also in political news has been the decision and the statement from Mark Zuckerberg and Meta that they're going to limit fact-checking. This has already happened on Twitter, as everyone knows, through Elon Musk. And it's something that really strikes me because something I try really hard to do as someone in this community is to curtail misinformation. And I think that whether we like it or not, the magical community or witches or whatever are people who are frankly prone to misinformation and conspiracy theories. And so to see just another part of our media that we interact with daily that spreads propaganda and whatnot sort of take this road is alarming. So consider that when you're engaging in your media sources. Finally, on a much more occult note and a little happier, Monday is a full moon in Cancer.
Yay.
Big deal because it's
Run
going to be in
everyone.
domicile.
Run
No,
everyone.
it's in domicile.
And it's a
That moon's gonna want to tell you what it's done for you and how you've done nothing for it. And then it's gonna hide behind a cloud.
But it's occulting
No, it's
Mars,
going-
right? It'll
it's going behind
seem
Mars.
from the human eye
In front of Mars.
occult Mars, right? To hide
Oh, that's
Mars.
cool. Yeah.
So it's a really
So you'll
good
be able
time.
to see Mars near the moon.
Yes, and then you won't. Then the moon will occlude it
It's
entirely.
pretty rare that
Of
it
course,
happens.
it's Cancer. It's gonna eat Mars.
Mars actually, but yes. So if you're somebody who's
I
really
love
into
Cancers.
astrology, look into that because it's
My
going to be
favorite
cool.
emos.
God bless us all.
The wolf moon and the full moon,
Yep.
yes. And think about the dead of winter in the ancient times. It would have been just so bleak, so dark for so many hours, and so cold.
The brightness of it all.
So, in conventional modern newspaper astrology, you know how most people get like 2 signs they're compatible with romantically? Tauruses only get Cancer. Like nobody else supposedly likes us but Cancer. I have been in long-term relationships with Cancers. I don't recommend it.
I am a Cancer. So.
Hey, I adore you. But if we were in a relationship, I think it would be more problematic for you than me.
It would be. It would be. Somebody would have to call someone. So that's all the news. We'd have to get somebody on the phone. I'm going to pass it to Brian, who's going to do our demonstration today.
All right, so I think Levi may have done this at one point in time. Either that or we just talked about it. But I decided, thinking about what I want to do today, I thought I would do a little bibliomancy.
I love
Now, I was sort of brushing up on the history of it, and it's actually a very old practice. I would presume at one point in time it was connected to the Bible popularly because we call it bibliomancy, but it's supposedly older than that. I don't know, but that's what people say. So the idea of this is you think of a question and you take a book, and originally it's supposed to be a sacred text, but you can use any book you like. So you ask a question, you open up, and the first thing you read is the answer. Very simple, very fun. However, I brought a book today that's sort of designed on it, and this book can be used in a few different ways and has its own system of bibliomancy, so I thought I would share that with you. It says, Napoleon's Oracle, the Ancient Book of Fate from Egypt's Valley of the Kings. Introduction by Judy Hall. I don't really know a whole lot about this book, but supposedly it's like an older thing. I doubt it's really connected to Napoleon, but who knows? I got it as swag a few years ago because people will sometimes send Christian and I just gifts so that we'll buy them in the store. And this was one of those, which we didn't buy.
Who gets to ask the question?
Well, I was going to have you each ask a question.
Goody. Okay,
and
goody.
then since Carrie's here, if she wants, she can ask a question. She's in our live studio audience. And if any of you want to, we'll do a couple of questions. If you want to type out a question, feel free, and we'll do you. Who wants to go first?
Ellie wants to go
All
first.
right, so in this, you ask a question, and then to make it different than usual, you are also going to pick a letter from the alphabet. And I'm going to put on my glasses for fashion reasons.
Do I tell you the letter?
Yes, you ask the question and then pick a letter from the alphabet.
Okay, and funny, my spirit guide said, try this technique with using the National Enquirer. That's going to be really cute. My question is, when does Ellie get a new lover? And my letter is E.
Be nice, little book. Be nice.
Be accurate. E. E for Ellie.
Beware of false friends.
Oh, love that. So just have a little
That's the
fun.
answer.
Let it have a little fun and then let them go.
Don't let a friend set you up on a blind date.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what it said to me,
Okay,
like
all right.
immediately.
I don't know, but that was the answer.
All right, I'll take it.
Levi?
What does work growth look like this year?
What is what?
Work growth look like this year?
Work growth look like? What letter?
I.
There are some actually lovely different systems in this, and because I'm a man, I didn't really read the instructions.
I mean,
So,
Good job.
you don't need instructions.
You don't. It's more fun when you don't
turn
read
left
the
at the sit go.
instructions.
Strong drink may cheer thy heart now, and make thee forget thy sorrows for a short season. But in the end, they will unfit thee for the enjoyment of prosperity. I think it thinks you're developing a drinking habit.
It would be incorrect, but
So this isn't for me. I don't know.
maybe avoid excess.
It could be.
I'll take that.
It could be.
But I felt like, you might be a little worried about things and you wanted to ease that. But the final prognostication was you're going to be prosperous and have growth.
I love it.
I felt like that when he was
I
reading
think
it.
it's saying not to be distracted by pleasures,
By drinking.
Fair.
which we know you're really not anyway.
Everybody thinks
Carrie,
it's
do you have a question?
an ascetic.
You don't have to have one.
I
But
do. I would like to know how travel is going to expand for me this year and the abundance connected with that.
all right.
And a letter, right? Let's do J.
J. So she's asking you about travel and the letter J, if you didn't hear her.
So, and usually in this, you always pick you just look, and the first thing you see is the answer. Why am I not finding J? I just saw it.
You got it.
Oh, it looks like an I, that's why. Drunkenness brings on premature old age. Avoid it and you will live long. I'm not sure how that helps, but apparently this book has a problem with drinking.
This book is very Methodist. This book is... This book is like, you all have a problem?
I'm not sure if I recommend this book yet, but we're not going to give up yet.
I'll take that. Somebody, let's do...
What does that mean? I don't know.
I couldn't translate it into travel. I didn't have a psychic.
Enjoy...
Don't drink and fly, maybe?
Yeah, don't get tipsy on the plane.
Who flies so hopefully the pilots?
Yeah.
So
No, thank you.
Probably
we'll take-
sometimes.
Let's take one from the audience, and then we'll
If
move
we
on.
have one, yeah.
We do. So Chris wants to know, is the person I met who is a potential lover trustworthy? And the letter is Z.
Something tells me that it's going to be about drinking. He's a drunk. Don't do it. Z. Okay, I gotta find it. Oh, Jesus. Let no one interfere in the domestic feuds of married persons. If left alone, they will soon subside, and the parties will be happy as before.
Trustworthy as long as he's not cheating.
Correct.
I take it as don't let outsiders influence your relationship.
Yeah,
That's
because
what
people
I
might be meddling.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am going to go ahead and bring on our ambush interviewer, which is Shelby. So we're going to bring him on. He can unmute.
Oh, hi to my mom, Diana, who watches the
Blessed
show
be Shelby.
live and then tells me how.
Blessed
I'm
be.
here. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
We're so glad that you're here. It's so wonderful to see you and to hear what the topic of these questions are. So what is the general theme tonight, Shelby?
So I started watching all of the videos from this past season, and one thing kind of got not necessarily brought up, but mentioned, but it was never actually like a topic. So I chose gatekeeping, keeping the mysteries sacred.
I like this topic.
It's a good topic.
It is. And what's
Could
our
be controversial.
controversial? Who could imagine?
I mean,
What's our first question, Shelby?
me? So the first question is, going right off the bat, do you believe there is still a place in today's world where witches have a duty to be either public or private, and why?
I feel like we've been asked this exact same question before.
Not in these words,
Oh.
Because it's the duty thing.
Or
So,
I've asked someone.
Shelby,
this
the way it
question.
works is you get to pick who
No,
you
I
want
asked
to
Maxine
answer.
this question. You
did.
That's where this came from.
You get to pick who you want to answer.
So Brian can go first.
Say it to me again, because I distracted myself.
Okay. In today's world where there's, Instagram, TikTok, witch talk, whatever, do you think that there is still a place in today's world where witches have a duty to be either public or private?
Well, I don't think they have a duty to be either. But I think witches can be public or private. I think our only duty is to respect private witches and to hold their privacy, because people forget nowadays. I think there's an idea that, everything's out in the open and everyone's out in the open. There are still secret initiates, there are still secret covens, there are degrees of secrecy, and there are people who are private for various reasons, whether it's their profession, their family life, or perhaps it's because of how they want to just approach religion to be private. So, we've got two ends of it. So the outer court of what we would call witchcraft is what most people are perceiving as witchcraft. And that, of course, is public. And it has people filling those spaces, with their voices, with their content, with their books, but there's a whole nother side that, in my opinion, is much deeper, that is the private side of witchcraft, because we are, after all, a secret society, first and foremost. And all of our literature was designed around being a secret society, and that's something I think even modern practitioners sort of forget when they're even studying, is that this was designed for private practice. So, like when we talk about concepts like asking people for consent and things like that, you couldn't do that and be a secret society. Hi, I just want to tell you,
I worship the devil.
I worship
Can I help
the
you?
Dark Lord. Can I do a love spell for you? Yes, it doesn't quite work like that.
Short life.
So, basically, I think that what I'd say is that both needs to exist, and that we have a duty to protect the privacy of witches, and it's part of our oaths. But we don't have a personal duty to be public or private. They're both perfectly valid.
Ellie.
I'm going to agree with Brian in my own personal viewpoint. I really believe in the diversity of religions, and I consider it a personal duty or obligation to promote to the world there are other religions than the main major ones, and that in witchcraft often you're young when the gods come to you, or it's very strong for you, and sometimes you don't have language for it, or it's not allowed in your home or your culture. So I really believe it's important to speak about the fact that there are these religions and they are real and true for many people. And I do that, obviously. I'm on this show. I'm a public high priestess, and I say that. But privately, internally, because we are initiatory and we are in a private sanctuary and temple, that work is private, and what happens in my own soul is very private, and I don't put that out to the world. I think we should have that sense of deep privacy out of respect and reverence for the work we do. So for me, it's yes to both. Some of it's obligation to give out information for others so that they know they can go these paths if they want to, and then maybe personal respect. And that goes with respecting those other witches. It's not our place to tell anyone what they're doing or what they believe, but also keeping our inner work private. I like that idea too. Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
I just wanted to point out that Diane Barnes has commented that she heard you. And then the comment after it is that she would like you to know that your hair is frantic.
Diana. It is. It's raining today.
It's like
I knew it.
When you mentioned her name, she just typed, I heard you, ... Very ominous, Diane.
It's raining today.
Nana can read a person.
Yeah,
Diana
Diana is being ominous. I love it.
And it's raining, and I've already been in and out. It's freezing here today. It's raining. And I said, oh, hair, you've got a mind of your own. And your mom's going to see it.
And she's here.
Should I ask your mom, does my hair look flat? Because I felt like it looked a little flat.
Diana will let you know in a moment.
I know she will. Diana.
It's like
Diana.
Diana. It's
Nana
like
Diana.
Yes,
Nona Diana.
Yes.
Nona Diana. I thought it was Nana. Nona's a grandfather, I thought.
Nonna.
Nonna.
Yeah, with an A at the end.
Practicing Italian.
So, secrecy.
Thanks, Mom.
I agree that I don't think anybody has a duty to be public. We allow, and actually, were traditionally secret initiates. So I have people in my coven who are not public, and it would damage their life to be public on some level. And so we don't require that. You know, a confession of faith is a very Christian thing, right? That's a very sort of like confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord. If you deny me in the public, I will deny you before my Father. Like there's a long sort of like history of that in Christianity. We don't have that. So I don't think there's any onus whatsoever on witches to be public whatsoever. I think you could be private. I don't think it's a moral imperative at all. Yeah, that's what I got for that one.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
So branching off of that, this one might be a little bit controversial, but you know, we'll see where it goes. I kind of want to get into the privy versus privacy part. So, why do you think either like non-initiates or even some initiates to a degree too think that our practices and what we actually do should be public? And let's go with Brian on this one.
Well, I think our exposure to witchcraft was from public work. You know, so most of us got into it by reading books, you know. So it was, you know, very few people are probably alive today who actually rolled into it privately, though it does happen. And so I think in that particular instance, our first exposure, you know, starting with the work of Gerald Gardner, who wrote the first books about witchcraft as a self-proclaimed witch, you're already exposed to someone being a public witch. And so everything we were drawing from and everything we were exposed to was that kind of publicity work. And so therefore, I think it's kind of seen in some ways as a gold standard. The problem nowadays is it's not, the motivation isn't for the same reason. So as I was stating earlier, the priesthood itself, like being initiated into a coven, you're very much taught about secrecy and privacy, and you're, you know, just as encouraged to be, in some cases, you're more encouraged to be private. I know high priesthood who will not allow their initiates to do public work. You know, I believe that my teacher, Val Hughes, probably would not have allowed anyone in her coven to do public work on the onset. I remember her trying to get me to keep a couple of mine from doing it until she understood the world in which we were in. You know, Oswestry, I probably still don't say that right. Oswestry and New Orleans are very different creatures. So, and also the British and Americans are very different creatures. But basically, I think it's different now because I think most people who wanted to be public, Gold Star standard was about the work originally. Like they were excited about it. They wanted this religion to be socialized to some extent. They wanted to, you know, realize whatever dream they were having in their mind about it. Unfortunately, now I think we have a culture because of social media where everyone wants to be famous, you know, and it's so encouraged, it's in our face, and it doesn't matter why you're famous. Like, you know, you can be famous on TikTok. You can
Look
be
at the hawk to a girl.
Yes, you can be famous on, you know, TikTok or social media or Instagram or whatever vein that they're doing now. And although that's a useful tool, I think we have a whole generation or two that thinks they're supposed to do that, you know, and so they'll try to figure out what their niche is. And I think witchcraft has become increasingly one of those niches for people. I'll just be famous about this because it's worked for quite a few people. And so, but from a very different angle, like the three of us are occult famous, I suppose, but not for like, because we're good at social media, just because we wouldn't go away, really, honestly. But, you know, writing books, doing work, doing this podcast, things like that, we have done, but not just, none of us did it to be famous, you know? So I think that that's a different medium. So I'm going to say that if I haven't trailed off too far, that I don't think it's bad to be famous, but if you want to be famous, just to be famous, I don't think witchcraft is probably the medium you should use because, as Christian Day coined, being a famous witch is like being a famous janitor. It's only going to get you so far. If you want to be famous, do something more mainstream, you know. And I think it's problematic because if you're doing it for fame, you're probably not very knowledgeable.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Levi.
I'm going to take it a different route. There are people who think that witchcraft should be public for a sort of political reason. It is a reason that is philosophical for them. You know, it is an idea that closed societies are elitist and gatekeeping, that that everything should be public, everything should be open, that secrecy breeds abuse, that secrecy breeds elitism, it breeds all these hierarchies and whatnot. And this is a question that I believe goes to the core of what witchcraft is for you in the first place. For me, it's a religion that I participate in to bring myself closer to the divine. And so I'm not grounded in a secular worldview that then uses religion as a prop for that secular worldview. I know a lot of people who identify as witches because they hate evangelical Christianity, right? Or because they hate patriarchy, or because they hate what's being done to the earth environmentally. And that's why they're witches, right? And so everything flows from that. So they don't like secrecy. They don't like secret societies. They don't like hierarchies, because they're coming at it from a place that's indebted to things like socialism and critical theory and all these other things, which I love all those things. I'm a big old leftist, but I'm also very religious. Like when I come to craft, I'm coming for a transformational experience with the gods. So that's the ground from which I judge these questions. But people who opened up the craft publicly, and people who were just straight up oath breakers, we're not going to name them or anything, but like they had an agenda, which was to shatter, and they still do, which was to shatter. And some of them I do think were acting in bad faith, of course, but I think some of them actually did believe it. I think they really did believe it was like, this is a moral thing to do.
It was their right. They were the ones.
Or it's a duty, right? Like it's a good thing to do, to shatter these things. But I hate all of that. I think it's just a misunderstanding of what the sacred even is. Like I think it's a misunderstanding of what mysteries are. I think it's a misunderstanding of what the quest is. And I'll end this with saying one of my favorite things that Maxine teaches, Maxine Sanders, who's one of the co-founders of our tradition, is we don't have secrets. We just have mysteries. So, this idea that you're going to give it all to the public, well, it wouldn't matter anyway. Like, that's my takeaway. In the end of the day, I could give anybody in these comments a copy of our Book of Shadows. I'm not going to do this. I could even tell you secret names and passwords and whatnot. If you didn't have the experience of being transformed by the mysteries, they would just be a hollow, useless skeleton anyway.
And your rituals will show it.
What about you, Alex? Oh, wait, no, that's you. It's you.
Yeah, the idea of proselytizing came into my mind. One of the things that we're sort of educated to in initiatory religious witchcraft is that we're not trying to convince other people that we're the right and only religion, whereas many Western religions want to do that. They're convincing the public that they're the good and the right religion and that you need to become that religion. We're kind of the opposite of that. We're saying, no, everyone should investigate for themselves, study, learn. We'd like to show that it's here. This religion of witchcraft is here. It's available, but we're not trying to convince you to become a witch or a religious witch. So I think, to go back to the question, that the public demand that we share the private information, or that it's their right to know more about the religion, I don't agree with that. I think it's a luxury that we talk about it at all, and that our goal is to not try to convince you, almost even to turn you away, and then see how devoted your own soul is to the gods, and over time you come back to it because it's right for you.
If I want to take a guy home with me tonight, it's none of your business.
Beautiful.
That came into my mind.
Shelby, you
a different kind of Bibliomancy.
You've spurned
songs that pop
an
in
entire moment here.
Radiomancy.
Radiomancy. The radio waves in your brain.
Radiomancy. Yeah. As initiates, as priests and priestess and high priesthood, do you believe the public should even know anything at all in the way of like being seekers, like going to your local witchcraft store or versus buying books on Amazon? So do you think that the public should even really know anything as far as like seekers today? Let's go with Levi first.
I mean, the question is sort of, it's good, but the thing is the cat's already out of the bag on some things, right?
Yeah.
We can neither confirm nor deny, but that only goes so far. I mean, our own elders have been very open about certain things in the craft. So I think that it's perfectly fine for us to answer questions about the sort of bare bones belief of craft. We believe in a god and a goddess. We believe in initiatory rites to bring you into a relationship with that god and that goddess, which leads to training in the practice of magic. That's about it, right? I mean, I don't go much further than that, honestly. I think that really good training should be built on a foundation where you kind of already have the smell, as we might say, of the initiate. Like you can tell, like, is this somebody who's seeking genuinely or whatever? Is this somebody who's asking the right questions? And you sort of learn that as you grow in craft. But I mean, do they have a right to know it? Well, no. I mean, they don't have a right to know anything. I mean, like, you know, privacy is a beautiful thing. You know, we all cherish what's private in our lives. So I don't think anybody has a right to it. I think, like I said, the cat's out of the bag on some of it, and purposely so, right? You know, absolutely purposely so. But yeah, that's all really. I think I keep going back to this thing of the experience is what matters anyway. So they're never going to know. Like, I know this is a very cheesy sort of thing, but in a lot of mystical literature, all of this is analogized through love. Somebody who can sit and explain to me the neurochemical relationship between, you know, brain patterns of lovers, but who's never been in love and never had a partner, does not understand love. I don't care how educated they are on the neurochemistry of it. I don't care how much love poetry they read.
Levi, love is a science.
It's not, right? It's a, you know, it's actually an expression of the divine, but like, that's the thing, right? Like, so like the experience is what we have, and that cannot be publicized, because it can no more be publicized than talking about love makes you a lover, right? It just doesn't work that way.
Blessed be. Brian.
This world has no right to know it, and the world beyond will tell not. The oldest of gods are invoked there, the great work of magic is wrought. So I agree with Levi, we can discuss our beliefs. We can discuss that we are a religion. We can discuss our gods. What we don't discuss is the training, you know, or we're not supposed to, you know. The cat's out of the bag sort of thing. I agree with Levi to an extent on that. I personally, and this isn't criticizing you, but just so there's no misunderstanding, I don't think because someone else oath broke something at one point in time that it gives the rest of us permission to do so. You know,
I agree with that.
And you know, certainly what we would consider oath breaking now may have been different when there was less access, you know. So I'm not going to get into that too much, but I'm saying, you know, if you're an oath breaker, you're an oath breaker. Your oaths are your oaths. They don't belong to me. They don't belong to Levi. You know, his oath belongs to him. We all took the oath. We know what it says. It's not really obtuse. So I would say, you know, in this particular case, however, our religion wouldn't consider interacting with society as being oath-breaking. We've always done that. That's in our mythos. People come to us for magic. So even magic, I don't teach people magic the way that I would teach my initiates or people in training, but you know, like on the show, we might talk about Bibliomancy or folk magic or, you know, divining rods or things like that. Occult matters. Those are not our system of magic. We actually have an initiatory system of magic. So that is reserved for people in training in the priesthood, you know, and of course our inner mysteries, as Levi was saying, is reserved, but those have to be experienced. And our teaching is not just correspondences and forms. It's actually experiential, and it is experiencing the mysteries. I'd say primarily that is our form of teaching, you know, is to try to get people, yes, we philosophize, yes, we discuss, but yes, we lecture, but the primary method of teaching is through these experiences. So I don't even remember what the question is.
I know, I'm completely
but that's
lost.
my answer.
Reword it for Ellie, Shelby.
I'm completely
That's my
So,
answer.
the question was, as initiates, do you believe that the public should even know anything at all?
So let me tail that
being
off then, so I can just sort of actually answer the question. I believe the public should know about us, that we exist, but I don't think they should know about oath-bound materials. However, it's a fine line sometimes, you know, because we all chose to be... I believe if you build it, they will come. I believe if the lamp is lit, the light shines, some flies are going to go into that fire. We did. We were like, the light. We don't recommend it for people because it could burn you up, but it's warm and shiny. So I'm just going to say that, the right people will come. The right beings will be drawn to us. We don't need to proselytize, but we do socialize our religion so that the right people can find us, and so people don't despise us or persecute us as much as they have in the past.
And they see that we're really lovely. The thing that came in my mind was the idea, and I think we would agree with this in the Alexandrian tradition, is that we believe in reincarnation. We are witches in past lives, and we come back together with our fellow witches.
Ellie
in
was
this
Gerald
lifetime.
Gardner. I'm still
I know.
convinced.
He died the month that I was conceived.
Deanna, that explains her hair.
Right? Got
chaotic hair.
The Gerald Gardner
through.
hair.
Perfect.
He did die the month I was conceived. Okay, so I think that what Brian was saying, that those who are us anyway, it's true for them, and we want to shine our light so they can find us again. But I also am, of the opinion that 99% of humans aren't born again witches, and they don't need to be. They could study witchcraft, and they can copy witchcraft and do all kinds of eclectic religious practices that they create and develop amongst themselves and their friends. But I think real older witchcraft is through lifetimes, and you want to shine your light for your fellow witches to find you, while not promoting everyone to find you. That's sort of that came in my brain. I like it how things come in my brain. Okay, that's my answer.
Blessed be.
Radiomancy.
Radiomancy, brainomancy, Eliomancy.
So my next question is, I'm going to reword it, but do you think seekers, that's how I'm going to reword it. I'm sorry, blessed be. So if you had the ability to hop in a time machine, go back, do you think because seekers nowadays have access to all of these different forms of information on not just a craft, but on like OTO and Freemasonry and all these other different aspects, because they have so much information, would you go back in time and change it to where they couldn't actually have as much now?
If we could change it, would we want it to be more secret?
Yes. Levi.
With the acknowledgement that we can, I would say that I think the hyper-publication of witchcraft has created a lot of bad religion. Because to me, this is not a question solely about protecting the mysteries, right? Sure, I believe that in a very religious way. But I think the proliferation of New Age ideas I think they have been disseminated in very bad ways. I think they have married themselves to toxic ideologies like root race theories, things like wish yourself out of illness. Christian Science shares a lot of roots with contemporary magic. I think that there is a lot of toxic, very dangerous conspiratorial thinking that goes on because of the proliferation of New Age ideas and, as a spirituality. And so if it's a pure hypothetical, then yeah, I would. I would keep it secret. The only thing that gives me that makes me hesitant to say that, though, is what Brian brought up earlier, which is the question of persecution. When everybody and their niece is a witch, they're less likely to pass laws against us or whatever. This is the same thing with coming out with queer people and whatnot. Like, having a public face for the religion gives you some level of protection. But on a purely hypothetical level,
only if you approach it as a religion.
Yes. But on a purely hypothetical level, sure, I do wish it was less public.
Brian?
I think I might try to warn a couple of the elders about certain things. But no, I actually am quite happy with how things have gone for the most part. I think it was inevitable, and I think we're just going through a transition. Maxine once said, and I've quoted this and mimicked it because I sort of just spiritually believe this. I think that, people will say, oh, there's more witches now than there were in the 60s and 70s. Inherently, I don't think that's true. I think that there's like this nucleus of the inner craft, the undercurrent of this whole thing, which we would say is Nishtoi craft. And that, I think, is probably remaining the same. There might be a few more of us, but I don't think it's really that many. I think it's, I think there's dozens of good covens in either tradition. Good quality covens, dozens, and I think it just sort of remained that way. And then you've got the wider net casts. You've got people who were in covens once or who bumped into a coven or have the initiation who are yakking on social media, but they're not actually doing the work. Mm-hmm. And then you've got all the other things that, because the word witchcraft and that is just a very loud conversation right now. So you've got people who do it politically, you've got people who do it as an aesthetic, you've got people who do it as a lifestyle, and then you have people who do it as a religion, and then you have people who are priests of that religion. So there's a whole spectrum of what this is now, depending on who you're having the conversation with. And I don't think it matters what we think about the spectrums, they exist. In our society. So I think it's probably the movement being more publicized has probably done more good than harm. I think religion being misused by human beings is a phenomenon we're not ever going to escape. No. And that's probably why I like my religion being in small groups. I don't worship with masses. I worship with a small group of people. So my actual religious practice is not like, it's not that vulnerable to that sort of thing. Sure, it has its vulnerabilities. We could get a person in that's off or something like that. Yeah. But it's one person. It's not like I have to deal with, I'm not personally responsible for the lipstick witches. You know what I mean? It's not, and I'm not a lipstick hater, but, I'm not responsible personally for that. Nor is Gerald Gardner, nor is Alexander's. It's just, I think that's just the evolution of our society, and because witch has been a consistent voice, witches have been a consistent voice in our society, and people are looking for alternative religions and spiritualities. It's obviously, been noticed, and people are going with it, whether they misunderstand it or misrepresent it or not. It's just there, and that's one of the things I'm kind of trying to highlight in my book, The Religion of Witchcraft. The mythos of the witch has been there for a very long time. Mm-hmm. It is ingrained in European society, deeply ingrained. So the fact that it's manifesting in different ways now shouldn't really be shocking. It's never gone away. Truth. But I might warn some of the elders, this is going to happen.
Yeah, this is going to bite you later.
If you can do anything.
Please don't do this.
Don't kill the chicken.
Doreen, sweetheart.
No.
So going back in time, I would leave the information on the table. I believe in freedom of information. What I would change is the direction of education, particularly in the United States. I've watched in my lifetime education for basic critical thinking skills, reading, writing, research, analysis, compare and contrast information, weaken decade by decade. And so today we have a population of generally poorly educated folk, especially when they're looking at information. They don't know how to analyze, they don't know how to read and research.
Media literacy.
So even vocabulary, even just the way that you look at an idea and be able to discuss it, research it, and cross-check it is all disappeared. So I would add layers of more intense education, and that's through the high school level. College isn't necessary. It can be done in high school. It's done in Europe and Scandinavia and Japan and China, where you're in India, where you're powerfully educated in 12 years of primary school to think critically, to research academically, to discern truth and fact. So I want the information left there, but I want a caveat. It's got to be accompanied by strong education in the society, and today it is not accompanied by strong education. I would change that.
I just want to point out an observation that has nothing to do with the conversation. I think caveat is probably like a favored word on this podcast.
We do use the word.
We use it a lot.
It's like, just a quick caveat. I have one
Also,
little
but
thing.
just in case.
Just in case.
We all use it. It's necessary.
Put it on a t-shirt. So I'm going to kind of switch gears just a tad, because we've been kind of talking more about like gatekeeping for the public, but what place do you think gatekeeping actually helps, not just to the public, but within the tradition itself? Like keeping some information either not necessarily away from some, but kind of hidden from some.
Yeah.
And let's go with Brian first.
Well, this is done because there are oathbreakers. You know, and the idea of it is if you have to get so invested you become a third degree, you're probably less likely to ever become an oathbreaker. Not saying it can't happen, but it's reduced. So if you get a first degree out there being an oathbreaker, they can only go so far because there's so much they don't have access to. That's my idea of that filtering system. And that goes for Gardnerians and Alexandrians. You know, I know an Alexandrian thing would be like the motto of our Grand Sabbath coming up in Cornwall is we keep it secret to keep it sacred. You know, and there's always been a practice within initiatory traditions and even like mainstream religions. You know, there's the idea that the high priests of the Israelites, I don't know what we're supposed to call them anymore, but anyway. So
The holy polies, yeah.
Yes, they had secret names of God that were not shared with regular rabbis. You know, that's a well-known, established idea. So secret names, secret practices, the heart of certain things. Do I think anything's being kept back to the extent that it's like shocking? You know, I don't think anyone gets their third degree and is like, oh my God, I didn't know we worshipped the spaghetti monster. You know,
It's all about aliens.
Yes, I don't think there's any like revelation like
Scientologists.
that. But yeah, certain things are kept back. But you know, gatekeeping. I know there's this huge thing about gatekeeping, and I, to be honest, don't exactly know where it originated, the idea, but all initiatory traditions are gatekeeping. And I think that's a good thing. I think it creates, once again, we keep it secret to keep it sacred.
Most religions gatekeep.
To some level, yes. Yeah. You've got to do this or
You got to be
that.
baptized to be a Catholic.
And the people who are protesting this are people who've never entered in. So there's a lot of FOMO about people. I mean, we've all met anyone initiated into Gardnerian or Alexandrian craft on here, or maybe even other traditions, have encountered people who think they know everything about us. They are convinced they have the keys to the kingdom already and it's not necessary. Well, it just simply isn't true. You know, they don't. And the initiate's sitting there being like, you sound like an idiot. You know, and we don't say that, but that's what we're thinking in our head because you do. You know, and regardless of what cats may or may not have been let out of the bag or will be in the future, it doesn't matter because we will put a veil of silence up and we won't discuss it with you.
At night, all cats are great.
And you're not going to have the experience and you don't get it because there is also oral lore in the craft. And unless you've experienced it on the hands of a teacher, it doesn't matter what materials you have. And also, Levi and Ellie are going to resonate with me with this, and I'm not talking about any of my students per se or anything like that. So this, I don't want to be like you and be so mean. But the truth of the matter is we've all experienced that some people just don't get it.
Yes.
You know, and just because you were in a coven, just because you trained, doesn't mean you absorbed all of the information. You know, we have some really good teachers in the craft, and unfortunately we have some people that are not very good teachers in the craft. And I think it was Thorne Mooney who talked about that, and I agree with her that being a high priest or high priestess does not necessarily mean you're a good teacher. These are separate
skills.
vocations. Right. And we like the idea that we should all be good teachers, but it's just not the case. It's not, you know. So everyone up here is a good teacher.
Yes, we are.
Particularly me.
Well, look at his 2 primo students.
We did
Ellie and
great.
Levi, right?
But Levi came with some skills I didn't give him. I just warped his mind.
Ellie
a bit.
did too. Came with skills you didn't give me.
Ellie, you're
Don't
amazing.
get jealous.
Okay, here's what I want to say. It's not, to me, it's not so much gatekeeping. It's the practice and the development of the understanding and experience and ability to understand the information in a deeper way. It's just like that adage where you can read a book, a strong philosophy book in your 20s, and you're like, oh, I get this. And then you read it in 30, and you have, oh, look at all this stuff I didn't figure out. And you read it again at 40, and you're like, oh my God, I didn't even
Hegel,
understand
anybody?
Yeah, it happens.
all this nuanced.
It happens to me now.
Right? It happens to us all. Now, it's a deeper understanding. So in gatekeeping, it's not that we would not show the ritual in the 3rd book or something, the 2nd book, we would, but it's that good priesthood and teachers help the student grow in their abilities to go deeper in the material and understand the material, and why overload you with information you're not going to really absorb or understand, like Brian is saying. And everyone's different.
That
So
sounded good.
a teacher in priest is going to recognize in his student the way they learn and how to help them learn effectively little by little so they grow.
Or if they're mildly retarded.
Well, they
No,
grow.
don't say that.
They grow in their
I
strengths,
said mildly.
Hate that word.
and then as they do
I
grow,
wasn't saying it to a retarded person.
as they grow out of mild
It is a
retardation,
part of the English language.
they become better at learning new
It
things.
used to be an academic word.
Things swastikas used to be a symbol for good luck. It doesn't mean we put them in front of the house.
So what's my idea about?
Some people do.
Blessed be Levi.
It's like, sorry,
Blessed be.
like the R word is a slur. So I agree. I think that gatekeeping within the tradition, which is your question, Shelby, is actually, it's not about secrecy, it's about teaching. So
Right.
like, here you go, everybody. I'm going to teach you the mysteries of the planet Venus. It's related to love. Its colors are green. Its metal is copper. It's associated in the vast majority of grimoires with magic to do with sexuality, love, art, the arts, and creation. There you go. Now
Beauty.
you're an initiate of Venus. Do you feel enlightened? No, because it's a string of useless facts, right? Like, you know, this is about teaching, right? If you are not connecting to something, imbibing it, being transformed by it, using it and failing at it and learning from those failures to grow and to have successes, then you're not really learning anything. So if I gatekeep something from a student by saying, oh, you're not ready for that, or we're not going to discuss that yet, that's not the point. The point is not because I think you're not, I'm so above you or whatever.
Right.
It's because I want you to get to have the same experience I did, right? To be led to experiences. To end on, there's
You
this
need
huge...
to have an alcoholic, abusive mother.
It worked for me, right? Not my real one. My real one was a saint, but this one, she was a journey for all of us. I think we've already, raise your hand if Regina George has personally hurt you in this witchcraft circle. I think every single person in the room. So here's what I'll end with. It's a pretty common thing you'll read that the revelation at the end of the Mysteries of Eleusis was a sheaf of wheat. There's actually no proof of that, but it's a commonly stated thing in books about the Mysteries of Eleusis.
Or a grain of moldy wheat.
Yeah, it was like, here's the whole, all that work, all those days of fasting and drinking the kukeon and whatnot, and it's a sheaf of wheat, right? Sure, maybe, we don't know what the epoptea was.
But it would have meant something
But it
so
would
much
have
more.
meant something so much, even if it was.
Yeah.
Because magic, as I say all the time lately, it's become my new thing, magic is seeing. And so that sheaf of wheat is no longer a sheaf of wheat, right?
Especially if you're on a bunch of drugs at the time.
I mean, if that was the, there's not a lot of evidence that was what Eleusis was, but I kind of like to hope that it was. I kind of hope that they were, high on ergot or
It
whatever.
was
They added it
important,
in. It was part of it.
Yeah,
Maybe not
it's
the
like, well,
whole
there's no evidence
thing.
that it
And
was,
that's
but,
actually a really beautiful topic you're bringing up, because Eleusis was so well known.
yes, very public.
But Greek society legally protected that secrecy.
Yeah, they killed you if you...
Yeah, the government would kill you if you broke the...
Off
Keep
the
us
head.
so the telesterion.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the sheaf of so I'll end by just saying I want my students to get to see the sheaf of wheat and for it to mean something.
So Levi said something that inspired me that I also wanted to say. We are always talking about how, and I do believe this, the fundamental idea behind our craft is love, and when it comes to secrecy, that is also based on trust.
Yes.
And because we approach religion as having an intimacy like a good relationship. There's an intimacy, and regardless of how you navigate that relationship, there has to be trust, has to be built. You know, it's not just freely given, it has to be built over time. And so secrecy keeps the intimacy alive. And I think if you can translate that into a relationship, you understand how important intimacy is. And intimacy can't be shared with everyone. That's what makes it intimate. And so I think that's a really important part of aspect of secrecy as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Levi just brought up something that's a really good point. In, I think it was the second Santa Claus movie with Tim Allen, but there's a scene in it where his son is talking to like the future Mrs. Claus, and it's like they say that seeing isn't believing, believing is seeing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your childhood.
I love that. Like I said, we're quoting scripture up here on Covendom tonight. Santa Claus too.
Like it just popped in the back of my head. I'm like, oh wait, that's a memory.
The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to Levi.
Thanks be to Tim Allen, who has a new show with Kat Dennings. God, what an abomination.
So
he's a loon. What's your next question?
How do you think seekers should go about like figuring out what information is valid versus which is nonsense, which is like, what do you think is just straight up bull versus
every question sounds like it could come from a surfboard.
Well,
wait, finish this question. I'm struggling with even how to begin this.
Okay, Shelby, what you're saying is like that, because like I have struggled with this a lot recently. I don't mean to take the mic, but like I've had a bunch of seekers come to me who are like, well, I've read all of the books of insert famous initiate or whatever, and they're like, is this part true or is Cunningham wrong? Because I know he's wrong because you said he was wrong, so therefore it's the Farrars, right? But no, you said no, read them. Like it, because there is so much out there. I see what your question is. It's like, what advice do we have for seekers, basically, because of all that?
Is that the question?
Am I right?
In a sense. So like, what advice would you give to, let me reword it then. What advice would you give seekers who are kind of how Levi is saying, is like they've read all of these books, but they still think that someone's gatekeeping some sort of knowledge from them? So like, how
they are.
We are. That's the answer. Yes.
Like how? Like what advice would you give?
Yes.
Like that.
Ellie first.
I just like to say when people start talking to me about all they know and how they've read the things, and I just say, oh, honey, darling, I think you need to go look somewhere else. I just don't think this is for you.
Do you say it like that?
I do. I just say, go somewhere else. I said,
All of a sudden she's from Mississippi.
I just think Popeye's chicken is calling your name, and it's time to get biscuits and gravy. And I think we're not. I don't think
they're good though. They're dry.
I know. I love
if
biscuits.
if Ellie's told you to go take yoga classes, that was you.
I think you need yoga.
If Ellie tells you need to go to a yoga class, she is saying some very mean things to you.
And I said,
I just want you to know
and
that.
right after yoga, I want you to take a meditation class, and then I want you to go to hypnotherapy and get Reiki treatments. You are a healer, and you need to go study Reiki.
You're wounded.
I don't say that. I just tell them their gifts and to go on and do something else. Yeah, in a southern accent.
What an answer.
Blessed be.
That's the one.
Levi.
They're the ones talking to me.
I like I said, I actually do struggle with this a lot.
I don't know what to say
because
about it.
people come with not knowing, right? Like what's the, okay, well, because the fact of the matter is a lot of people who I actually do think are great initiates did start on this path because they read a book by an elder, right? And they were inspired, especially they were inspired by the imagery, like the pictures of our circles and whatnot, which are not actually accurate, and Alex and Maxine have said that publicly. They're like, what we did for the movies is not what really goes on and whatnot. But they're inspired by that.
And people still think it is.
I know they do.
But weren't you guys inspired by some of those books we read in the 80s? I mean, I was.
I wasn't that old then, but
I know, just
Brian was only 2 when, how would he have,
he learned to read early.
But I did have a used bookstore that had a lot of those older people books.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I think I struggle with this, Shelby. I don't know the exact perfect answer, to be honest. It depends on who's asking. If they're coming
Depends
the
on
way,
if you're pretty or not.
That's Brian's standard. But to Ellie's point, like if they come at it and it's my cup is already full, I want you to validate the cup. Well, then goodbye, right? Like, no, I'm not playing that game. But if they come and it gave them a hunger for the experience, that's what I see in people. They're like, okay, sure, the books are great or whatever, but I'm hungry for this experience. Like, I want to be in a circle and feel it. That's the key I look for. So that's the advice I give people. If you're only drawn to this as an historical oddity, it's probably not for you. And you're probably full of misinformation. But if you read these books or whatever, or you come with this information and it sparks a huge desire in you and you just can't stop thinking about it, like, I wonder what it is like to be in those images like they are. Like, you know, or I wonder what it is like to give yourself over to the gods in ecstasy, then you're on the right path.
And they come back, even if you send
Yes.
them off to study Reiki, and then 3 months later you're like, "Whoa, this person's back again," and they're like, "I read about Reiki, or I did this, but I kind of want to get back to my questions about witchcraft," and I'm
They
like,
keep coming
"Oh,
back.
I'm listening a little bit more thoroughly now."
Yeah, we really like
Yeah.
stalking persistence in these groups. Levi's a good example of this. You know, well, both of them are really, because in different ways. They were both well read. You know, when they approached me about craft, they were both well read. Levi was much more pontificating the BTW books. Ellie was like going higher than that. You know, she's like talking about everything.
Philosophy.
You know? Yes. So, but they were both well-read individuals, but they both had one thing in common, which is what made me interested, is neither one of them had a vibe of they thought they had the keys of the kingdom. Like, that was not the vibe. The vibe was, I can tell you know something I want to know. You know, and I know all this other stuff, sure. You know, what I like about students that are well-read in BTW books, where they've read most or all the books on the elders, is I know they kind of have a flavor for what they're asking for, you know, and that's always a plus. They at least have a flavor, they have a sense of it. Because we get people asking us who just want to join a witchcraft coven, and they've got no
idea.
conception of what's going on. Just like when most people use the word Wicca, they're really talking about Scott Cunningham, you know, and that's just a cultural narrative that is true. It may be fading a little bit more now because he's not as relevant as he
I actually think it's
was.
fading quite a lot. I think
Yeah.
the word Wicca is like going through a weird phase now of becoming more associated with the religion.
Well, yeah, that's
Slowly.
people have been trying
Slowly.
that for a while, but yeah, I do think because his popularity is fading.
Exactly.
That's
So
what it is.
you're seeing a change, but
in
it's
another
slow.
decade, maybe that won't be a relevant topic. But for decades, he was really the one dominating the
Everyone
conversation.
quoted him.
And so yeah, he's fading now, but which is a good thing in my opinion. But you know, the craft will use anyone to survive.
His research just wasn't that good. He was a cut and paste writer. He looked up.
I mean, he
things in
wasn't an
books
initiate.
and,
He didn't
just
have any training.
Glued it together.
He didn't have any training at all.
But I liked that question. What's your next question, Shelby?
So, I think I've gotten through most of mine. So, I'll end up
Callers.
with this main one.
Oh, we got one more. All right.
We have got one more. And because I thought it was going to be a good question to end on.
The only Cunningham we could think of. Yeah.
Being in high priesthood, what do you believe should be the one reason above all else to keep the priesthood and the mysteries themselves sacred? Not just secret, but sacred. Let's go with Brian.
Well, because it is. That's my answer.
Blessed be.
That's the big.
Levi.
I'm going to go a little deeper on this one.
Just this one?
Just this one. I used to be a miserable, closeted convert to Roman Catholicism.
So nothing's changed.
There you go. I did. That was my life. And then I left that, and I was a very bitter and angry non-believer for about 3
You
years.
would have made a very good mean priest.
I think
in
so
the
too.
Catholic
I think so
Church.
too. I think so too.
Hitting people with
Carmelite,
the word.
Dominican, not Jesuit, too liberal. I wanted the hard faith, right? But that used to be my life, and I had
been
never.
Pope.
I had maybe one vacation. I just was a very not. I was not a very developed human. I was very well read, but it didn't do me any good. And I had a very long series of events we won't go through here that led me eventually to be initiated into craft, which was something nobody in my life understood, right? They thought if I ever went back to religion, it would be something very, very high end, something very obsessed with, scholarship, something like
people were
Buddhism
shocked.
or Roman Catholicism, maybe an Episcopal church, whatever. And I didn't. I chose to become a witch, which shocked a lot of people in my life. And I now have I've been with my loving husband for 7 years. We've been together 7 years, married too.
Hex Fest is partially responsible for it.
I have worshipped in the temples of Egypt, Greece. I have been to Paris, London. I just got
France.
I've had such a ridiculous life and it's because I decided that I wanted to be free and know the gods, right? And this allowed that to happen for me. So I will always keep this secret. I will always keep this sacred because it can be the thing that brings you into the family of the gods. And if you take it that seriously, then it will be. And if you don't, you won't.
No.
And that's fine. I'm like Ellie. I believe in lots of lifetimes, guys. Lots. I think you have had more lifetimes than grains of sand on a beach. Like I do
something
not.
he believes in.
Yes.
Something
Yes.
he believes in.
You've had more lives than grains on a beach. Like I think it's all cyclical. And I think I think that we cheapen this when we play this game where it's like, oh, we're just like the pagans and we're all friends and we all are open and nobody, it's just whatever you need from it. It's like self-help. It's not self-help. This is not designed to make your life better. It made my life better because of the experience, not because it's a new age self-help system. So I will keep it secret. I will keep it sacred. I will wrench with my bloody hands every bit of new thought, new age garbage that has eked into this religion over the last 20 years in my coven. I can't control anybody else's, but in mine. And I will be like, no, this is initiation to an altar. This is initiation to be brought into the presence of the gods. And what you do with that is up to you. And that is not going to be accomplished through some sort of public garbage collection of pseudoscience and pop psychology. It's going to be through the ecstasy of the circle.
Say it, Levi.
Don't you think that's been that was Val without verbalizing it.
Yes, that was Val.
It's been consistent. It's probably Maxine and Alex too.
Oh yeah.
It's been consistent.
Remember,
it's just not verbalized that way.
Yeah, well, I don't want to go
just done that way.
I want to answer.
Ellie,
I'm tearing up because I was Levi, I love what Levi's saying, but as a little tiny kid, the gods came to me and saved me from my own inner turmoil. And I
thought that was the devil.
It was the devil too, because we love him.
Same thing.
So anyway, sorry, I am tearing up because they are the most powerful beings I know, and they've been by my side all my life, and I believe they were by my side in previous lifetimes. That's why I connected with them as a kid before kindergarten, and they've been by my side, and I love them more than anything on the planet, in the world. I love them more than humans. They are my best and dearest people. The old gods, the Egyptian gods, the Greek and the Roman gods. These are, and I can't imagine. I always wanted to work with them, serve them. I didn't call it be a priest of them when I was younger. I didn't have that kind of vocabulary, but I just said, I just want to be with you and work with you and learn from you and help you. I always felt like I want to help them back. I felt like they needed us.
I get that.
And I just wanted it so much. And so, I'm sorry, Carrie's crying too. We're all just crying. This is really important to us.
I can't cry.
But he would if he was capable.
He
If
can.
I could cry,
He would cry. And he does. And he is very emotional when we're all talking about this because it is a true and real experience and thing that gods are real and humans are real and we are interacting in the most powerful ways. And it's sacred. I know, right? It's sacred and it cannot be any other way. It's just the most powerful thing for humans. It's so important. When you can offer it to someone else and show them it can be done, there's no greater gift. And it is to the gods too. It's a gift to them to have people that continue to work with them and worship them in a world that doesn't honor them hardly. And I think a lot of modern gods are paper dolls.
Whenever we've gone to, and I'm sure many of you who've had the luxury of traveling to some of the older places in the world, Europe primarily, but when you go to the places where the old gods, as Americans, we don't have that.
Right.
But over there you go, particularly like in Greece or Rome or Egypt, you're
going
going
more,
where,
more.
One of the things that impressed me most about Egypt was when I realized that some of these smaller towns were still being supported by these abandoned temples
because of tourism.
So their whole town was still being supported by the temples, which were the things that caused that town to exist to begin with. So you start to get this feeling like you want to go bring them back everywhere you go. Do you know what I'm talking about? We went to Eleusis. I don't think any of us wanted to leave. We were like, this is home.
It was so
in that
amazing.
moment in time, that was home. And the ladies that were there knew it.
They did.
Even if they wouldn't let us consecrate a chalice inside the gate.
I know.
We did a lot there. We did a lot on those trips.
We still consecrated a chalice. We just had to outside of the gate.
Yeah. I mean, it is cool to have those experiences. But those are the end of Shelby's questions. So thank you so much. Blessed be Shelby.
Blessed be
He's going to
Shelby.
stay
Thank
with
Blessed
us, though.
be.
Now he's going to become
Part of the
panel.
So if you have...
Wait, let me say it.
He's going to do the number. He wants to do the voice. Do the voice, Brian.
So we'd like to invite you to call in tonight. And we have a phone number, and we're never sure if it works because every season we don't get calls in the beginning. And so I think it's working tonight.
It is.
So if you'd like to call in with any questions for the panel, including Shelby, Mr. Quave, please call in 309 Goddess. That's a 309 Goddess.
Sounds like it's the wrong kind of show. But yes, I'm going to go through in the comments as well. If you're not a caller, you can put questions in the comments and we will air them and talk with, and we'll all sort of, kind of go back and forth. Maybe we're not going to do it the same way. It's more free form here. One I really wanted to hit on, and I'll pass it to Brian for this one because I think it's a cut and dry answer. I believe, I think it was...
Is that me, the cut
Crystal?
and dry answer?
No,
I'll just
it's
cut
just-
them off with an ease.
Do you have...
No.
This is a moment of education, though.
All
Do
right.
you have to be a priest or priestess after initiation?
You are.
But see, I don't think a lot of people know that.
So here's where I'm actually going to give it a caveat. If you're not functioning as a priest and priestess, then you only have the rights and privileges of one. So you're not actually servicing. So that happens. So what we would call that being reculed. It means you've been retired. Which it took on a different meaning, but recule is, I think it's French for retire, is it? French?
Called back.
Called back.
Yeah, well, somebody said it was retired. I don't know. But in any case, now that's been a name for excommunication.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, yes, you could be a retired or non-active priest or priestess, which in my opinion means you're not really one. But technically speaking, once you have been initiated, you are always a priest or priestess. So can you be a crappy one? Absolutely. I've known many.
But yeah, I think that's something a lot of people don't realize. They think that only that we have a laity. We don't.
Right. There's no congregation.
No, there's no congregation.
We're all priesthood.
That's part of our mythos, and it's actually very crucial to how we operate.
Becoming an initiate, you have to think of it in terms of joining a cloister. So whether you're thinking of it as a nunnery or where the priests go, not the monks, but because I always got confused about the monks.
Monastery.
Monasteries, is that where the priests go too, though?
Priests go seminary.
Seminary.
To get trained. You mean training? Yeah. Seminary.
Yes. Well, whatever cloisters you into something, because a coven is in a sense a cloister.
I want to start. I'll start with Shelby with this one since he's our guest. Dolores is asking something I'm going to kind of reword, but what do you feel about this trend where every single person who talks about witchcraft publicly frames themselves as a teacher? Not as I also like witchcraft, but I'm a teacher.
Hate it. Just outright hate it. Being initiated and being taught by Brian and Ellie, it's you get a different sense of what the term teacher actually means. And it's I feel like people have this mindset of kind of still being in high school. Just because you like math doesn't make you a math teacher. Mm-hmm. Because you can explain math, that doesn't make you a math teacher. It's if you don't actually have the training to back it up, but you have all of these books mean nothing. Kind of like how we were saying about you said that if you can give a copy of our book to the public and them not know a lick of what's actually being understood.
I would go further, Shelby. I love your answer. We've all been in situations, I think, where you've seen poor training. And because they don't have the oral lore, they weren't trained well, so they do things by the book, right? which is wrong.
Right.
A lot of the times.
Right.
And so it's just a quick giveaway. Like you'll just see somebody say something, or like even on podcasts with Gardnerians or Alexandrians, and I'm like, oh, like you'll hear that one little thing, and you're like, no.
That's when we shift from being Alexandrian and we just become Southern and we say, bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
Bless your heart.
So I started with Shelby, so I'll start with Ellie for this person's question. Kirsten wants to know, what do you think about people who accuse Gardnerian or Alexandrian Wicca, that's her word, for cultural appropriation from other practices?
Ooh, let me go. Who's asking?
I asked Ellie, but I'm
go ahead.
Well, I'll say Brian's answer. We're a scavenger religion. We've obviously taken things
Maxine's
from history.
answer, not mine.
Yeah.
Maxine's answer. Pardon me, Maxine.
I do mimic it.
From many places. But appropriating, the way I understand appropriating is taking over a religion or cultural tradition and saying you are it and you own it and then you are authorized to teach it. I don't think we do that. I think we would say, this is where this came from. This is how it was introduced into our system. This is what we know about it. This is what we don't know about it. Because there's obviously pieces that we're not sure exactly where they were.
We just know they work.
You know, they work, and we don't know all the facts. But I think we are, and I want to add a comment about teaching. One thing, Levi's a trained teacher. I am not. Brian has also really helped me learn to be a good teacher. It's not automatic. Just because you know some information doesn't mean you're a great teacher. I think the same with appropriation. I think we all work hard to try to explain where we're learning something, where it comes from, as much as we know about its history, and then encourage our student to research and know more and find the truth of it and not appropriate. It's kind of a common thing in ATRs and all kind of other systems of religion that there's the appropriation going on. I think humans appropriate all the time from everybody.
One thing before you answer, Brian, real quick. There's a difference, though, in the way it's commonly said and what people who are like scholars of religion talk about. Mm-hmm. When they're talking about appropriation, it's between a power imbalance. So,
yeah, but that's not how it's used.
But like that is what it means.
What do you say?
That's how it
Say
started
that
out.
more. Explain that more.
So, like for example, it's appropriative. It's appropriative when the culture in question is disadvantaged.
I see, and we take from them, and they're a
So, like
disadvantaged
taking
culture.
from like British culture is not appropriation if you're eating fish and chips or whatever, because I mean they're imperial for God's sakes. Like they, you can't hurt them basically. So there's got to be a power imbalance. Is what the term originates.
Right, so can I go now?
Yes.
Please do.
I'm going to just segue off of what Levi just said. Witchcraft is not in power. So we are the disenfranchised, persecuted, lied about religion. So much so that people will rail that we're not even a religion. So we are absolutely not in power. The British Empire may have been in power. The UK could be seen as being power.
We're not.
But they weren't supporting us. We were not. So let's start there, number one. And then let's talk about what British culture is, because the word witch and the word Wicca are, it's Old English to modern English for the word witch. It's both of it's English. It's culturally English. So the word witch itself is culturally British. It doesn't exist in any other culture. So that's the English language, right? And if you look at the history of Britain, you get temples of Isis. You get temples of Diana. You get Roman religion, Egyptian religion, Celtic religion, Germanic religion, the Vikings. All of that is historically British. You also get a massive occult revival that took place in Britain. So the occult, one could say, has for a very long time been historically British. So I would actually argue, and I know it's a statement that will fall on deaf ears, and rightfully so in some ways, that I feel like witchcraft has been culturally appropriated. I think that every time somebody steps in and uses our verbiage and uses our materials and misaligns them, that in a sense they are culturally appropriating Wicca or witchcraft, because we actually are a culture unto ourselves. We have a historic revival that took place in the 1950s. We have a priesthood. We are a religion. We continue this to this day. And I don't know any religion on earth that has been more appropriated and abused than us. People don't take Judaism and try to pretend it's something else. They don't take Christianity and try to, they might, have their own versions, fine, but we are an established religion, and we are told we're not even a religion. So it's part of the reason I wrote The Religion of Witchcraft, is because the insulting notion that people feel like they have the right to say that to any human being, even if they believe it. So facts are on our side. Witchcraft is a religion that has been a religion since the 1950s and has continued to be practiced today with a priesthood, with its own holy text, with its own rituals, with its own religious beliefs, with its own cultures, culture and cultures. And we can speak on behalf of Alexandrian Craft and tell you that there is such a thriving small culture. It affects families, generational families that are not necessarily all initiated, but they've been touched by this Alexandrian thing because their mother was, or their father was, or their mother and father was. And so therefore it impacts their life in some way. So I'm pretty inclusive in the religion of witchcraft, to where I actually open it up a little bit and make statements like, hey, I don't think that you have to necessarily be initiated. But we definitely have a culture, and it is distinct. Is it made up of other cultures? Yes, so is every other culture on the face of the earth. There is no culture that is not made up of other cultures that didn't absorb religious ideas. And furthermore, I'm going to say, I don't think religion, it just depends on how you approach it, but religion isn't necessarily always seen as ethnic. And we don't actually believe that you have to be British to practice our faith. We're not an ethnic faith, but it did come from Britain. And most of what we do actually has been there at one point in time. We do some practices that have not been there, from the occult. But the occult revival, even though it started out in France and in some cases Germany, it really boomed with the British. And that's because there was this big thing called the British Empire. And certainly there is some appropriation that goes on there. But the appropriation goes both ways. And yes, I'm just going to end it with witches were never in power. If they were, it was never with the inception of the word witch.
No. I also just think that it's like a silly debate. I think it's an academic debate.
It's a way to try to be another form of gatekeeping.
It's a secular debate. It's like you're almost sort of admitting when you engage in these debates that the gods aren't real, right? That it's like that they're cultural tokens and not, it's like I'm not going to have that.
You can't worship Jesus unless you're what?
Exactly. It's just silly, and it's
like
also
only Jewish people can worship Jesus.
Come on, there's so
many. Is
many.
that how that works?
There's so many.
You don't even want to answer that question, do you?
Oh, Jesus. Well, Christianity is a missionary religion. It's not ethnic.
Yeah,
either.
but he was Jewish.
Yeah, he was Jewish. So they don't. A lot of white evangelicals will not agree with that, but so pretty terrifying.
Here's a fun fact that I'm going to leave this with because I did get on my soapbox. All human beings are related. All gods are related. All cultures are related. Get over it.
Yeah, nobody's an alien.
Get over it. Well, Ellie might be.
Ellie might be.
Little bit alien.
Ellie might be an alien.
Just part alien. Not the whole thing.
I'm going to go off Shelby's questions while I go through the comments. Thank you for all these questions. There's been quite a few of them. If I miss it, just put it back in the comments, guys, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, we see them all. But we'll start with Shelby because Shelby's I think you're the youngest, right?
He's not.
In age, anyway.
Youngest what?
Person.
The youngest person ever?
No, here.
Oh, well, fine.
So
in the room.
Mirror on the wall.
Did you ever?
How shall I make Shelby fall?
I know, right? God help you that I've said this, Shelby. It's going to be rough for you for a while. Did you have a perception of British traditional craft as closed off or elitist or anything like that before you came, or was that something you never heard?
He met me.
Before all this.
Before all of this, I not necessarily Alexandrian, but a couple of Gardnerians I did. It just like I don't know. It's like I had a friend that I talked to them, and she was from the Long Island line, and like she was the only one that didn't treat me like a lesser being, so to speak. And then I started working here, and I met Brian and Christian and Ellie and Carrie and everybody, but it's like the conversations that I would have with all of them as well as you, like none of you made it seem like y'all were elitist. Brian, maybe, but
don't come on here and lie. I was like, don't come on here and lie. It's rude. Like, it's like, yes, he did,
but never in the sense of, oh, I'm not going to even bother talking to you because you're not initiated. Because that's the vibe I got from like most of the Gardenarians that I've met, except for like maybe 2. And
which 2 would that be?
No, don't.
No, it's a compliment.
No,
I'm guessing one's Tracy.
Names.
Tracy.
Oh, I love Tracy. I adore her.
She's
playing drums with Raymond at Hexfest was the highlight of my weekend.
You guys were good.
That's good.
But
no, there are plenty of good Gardenarians. I think it's the online people that we see that cause that. And trust me, there's plenty of unpleasant Alexandrians.
Tracy loves you too, she said in the comments.
There's plenty of unpleasant Alexandrians online as well. So it's the online thing.
I looked into a couple of different like Facebook groups, and like I went on Witchvox. I did the whole thing. It rubbed me the wrong way, and so I was like, you know what, I'll be solitary, fine. And then, we're here.
It ends that way. Something I have to say to this though is, and I think everybody in this room has had this experience. It's always, there's this talk that initiatory craft is like snobbish, or that it's like silly because like we're holding on to this fake history or whatever. Like I hear I follow all these conversations on social media, but I'm going to tell you to sort of break that from you. At this point in my life, I've been in this for most of my adult life. I've met tons of Gardenarians and Alexandrians. Are there some big old problems? Yes. It's like I've met some people that could peel paint off the walls just by their presence.
I also think that experience is what kind of leads to this gatekeeping conversation.
Yes.
Because they're rude.
Exactly.
It's like they sometimes are mean to people.
For no purpose. Yeah. But here's the deeper point I was going to say.
And I don't mean just Gardenarians. Alexandrians, initiates in these groups. Sometimes you'll get someone coming on and asking a perfectly innocent question, and they rip them apart.
They get shredded, yeah. But let's all say, this is something I have experienced for a long time now. Go to like a small rural area or a suburban town and find the local pagan group. And whoever runs that is six times out of 8.
And always fat.
I love fat people, so I don't agree with your fat phobia.
But you know it's true.
I don't agree with your fat phobia,
but
I love you anyway.
There's always a fat person on every pagan elder council.
But
fat people lean to love too, Brian.
We all love them. But my point is I don't give a shit about what they look like. But there is this, that you want to find the worst tyrant, guys, then you find, Willow Starfire, who runs the local pagan group, who's never been a part of anything, who's self-trained for 30 years, and you will find an absolute monolithic ego almost every time.
And 90% of the time when you hear these stories about sexual indiscretions happening in covens, it's not an initiatory coven.
I know.
It's always Fred and his wife Amy in Minnesota, who are running a
cult, basically.
Yeah, running their Wiccan coven and doing something weird. It's never. I mean, look at what Kenny Klein here in New Orleans, when that all went down with his weird child molestation stuff. He went to jail for it. Died in jail.
I didn't hear about that.
We went to prison for it. So
when was that? What years?
I met him the day before he was arrested. That's literally, I met him the day before he was arrested.
Within the last 15 years?
It was really funny because he told Christian, he said, it was here at Hex, I met him, and he was with 2 young girls, funny enough. And he said to Christian, he goes, well, you're not a Wiccan witch. And I looked at him and I said, I'm not a Wiccan witch either. And that was the only interchange I had with him. And the next day he was in jail. But he, sorry, I'm not trying to trash. I mean, he was actually convicted. So, I'm not trying to bring up old wounds, but he wasn't initiated into anything like valid,
Not by our standards.
By our standards. So it was an American made-up tradition that claimed connections to other things, but there's no proof that existed. So you've got those are the people that are generally the people, is what I'm saying. Yeah.
It's always just like funny to me because it's this concept of gatekeeping is like, your questions, Shelby, around gatekeeping just made me think of we all gatekeep in our life. I mean, you gatekeep who you follow.
Gatekeeping is a good thing.
It's like, You know, who
It's
you
called
let in
having
your life.
standards.
Sometimes it just means boundaries, guys.
Yeah.
You gatekeep your home. You don't stand with your front door wide open and say,
No.
"Hey, whoever walks by, come on in."
No.
Come on in.
I think it was born out of rudeness. I think that's my
Oh, yeah.
guess. I don't really know where that came from.
I think fear
I
from
mean,
being found out.
In
if
the
you don't
actual
really
craft,
know.
gatekeeping is not only a welcomed occupation, but a necessary one. And so that's probably why we are accused of it so much. But I don't think we should run from it. I think we should be like, yes, we are.
Correct.
But it's healthy gatekeeping.
You know what else is like part of the problem here is gatekeeping is used a lot in online communities or even real life communities that are more related to things like hobbies or art forms. So, for example,
Leaked into.
a musical scene is accused of gatekeeping. If, like, let's say, Shelby, you're interested in a specific genre and you go to hang out with people and you're like, I want to get interested in this genre, and they drill you on how many albums you know and whether or not you know.
Yep.
And they're like, well, then you're not really a fan of insert genre or whatever. That's where that kind of, you see that term
But I
used
think
a lot.
initiatory groups do that.
But here's the problem. A hobby or an art form, like, is not the same thing as a religion. Like, and so there's this weird bleed of this word that makes no sense to me. It's just a silly conversation because it's like, of course there's gatekeeping in a religion, because we're not talking about death metal, guys. Like, whether or not you're a real black metal fan because you didn't like some, you know, Swedish noir album or whatever. Like, it's not the same thing.
One way we probably like gatekeep that I think is extremely ethical is we want to know if you actually believe in what we believe in.
Yes.
Because that is the nature of a religion. And although I think witchcraft does have a lot of flexibility, we do have a nucleus of what we actually believe in. Like, if you come into
Right.
witchcraft and you're like, I don't really believe in a goddess, well, that's problematic for us.
Yeah, it's probably not
You
gonna
know,
work out
we're
for
like,
you.
you're not probably in the right place. And if we come out and we tell you, well, you know, this is a goddess, in many ways, a goddess-oriented cult, and I like to say cult, religion, you know, you're a gatekeeper. You know, both of these, their extremes are happening on both ends. But I think we need to own it and say we are gatekeepers and be okay with that. I think apologizing for truths is not healthy.
No.
You know, what we can do is explain what we mean by that and ask them what they're talking about. Yeah.
Do you all think that some of this might have come, well, I'm just going to
Comes
say
from
it came
so
from
many
it.
places.
I think a big place it come from is like, if you're excluded from the Christian religion, like if they say because you're queer or because you're this or because you're that, you're no longer a good Christian. They're implying that you're going to burn in hell in most cases, right?
But they believe that.
And they believe that. So that is a pretty nasty kind of, of line. When we say this might not be right for you, and?
We don't wish
I
you
get
any
what you're
harm.
saying,
No.
but here's where I'm going to go and defend both. It is perfectly acceptable for them to believe that. It makes them bad people, and in my opinion, it makes them bad people, and it makes their religion bad.
Yes.
In my opinion, there are bad religions.
Yeah.
Some people think witchcraft is a bad religion, and I accept their right to believe that. So, but when you're entering into a religion, you're entering into something with either a strict set of beliefs or at least a loosely held set of beliefs, which is why we have different versions of things. You know, we've got different kinds of Muslims, we've got different kinds of Christians, we have different kinds of witches, you know, but there is a structure. So when you decide you're going to become part of it, you're sort of proclaiming, I believe what they believe, you know, and I think witchcraft is a bit more flexible than Christianity or other religions, but they fight with each other way more than they fight with outsiders. Christians and Muslims and all of those, they fight more internally than they do with outsiders. We just don't think about it, but they do.
Oh my God, yes.
You know, they're way more likely to get vicious with each other. So, and witches fight with each other probably more than they do outsiders. So I think it's just par for the course. You've got people, but I think it's all gatekeeping. And I think gatekeeping is just a natural part of the human experience. If they're meaning, I'm not going to come up with the right words. So I encountered a phenomenon years ago where it seems like people in the witchcraft pagan community, this is probably about a decade ago that I was really seeing this, and it may be where this kind of came from. They felt like religion should be regulated the same way state institutions were. So you can't reject gay people, you can't reject women, you can't reject
People
anything.
of color.
You know, anything that we as a society have decided is not legal for a business to do, you shouldn't be able to do with religion. And although I understand the sentiment, we have a thing in this country, or did, separation between church and state. So the government isn't supposed to regulate religion. You know, obviously we're on a slippery slope with that now, but that's the whole idea.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
Yes. So the problem is once you open that up and say, you can't, currently in this country, you cannot regulate religion, and that's a good thing in my opinion. And if you don't like a religion, don't be part of it.
Right.
You know, and I think where we get the issue with witchcraft is because so many people identify it who aren't actually practicing the religion, that they don't like the standard being there. You know, if they think a coven is homophobic, for instance, that is very deeply unsettling for them, and so they're going to rail against it. They're not in that coven.
Yeah, it's
it's just not. That's not how witchcraft works exactly. So what I would say is that coven is filled with a bunch of a-holes, and that's your right to have that opinion too. But where you get dangerous is saying that coven can't exist. I think you can be I think it's okay to have a homophobic coven. Religiously.
I'm not going to participate.
I'm not going to participate. I don't think it's craft. I don't agree with it. I'm not going to support it, but I support the right for it to exist. Because if I didn't, that could be turned on me. And someone could say, I don't believe that gay people should be able to be in a coven, or I don't believe in this, or I don't believe in that. So you got to be, it's a very slippery slope when you take people's rights to choose and how they worship. And the craft is very private. So I believe everyone, this is mostly happening in people's private homes. So I believe they should be able to worship with who they want, how they want, as long as no one's being forced. I think as long as it's a free choice. What I think witchcraft is, well, that's why we have these podcasts. We get to tell you. And guess what? You can have your podcast too. So
we have a couple questions. I'm going to pass this one to Ellie.
Did I go on too long of a time?
It's okay. We're sitting, we're listening, we're being a part of things.
We listen and we don't judge.
We listen and that is a big trend on TikTok. We listen and we don't judge.
I'm going to tell you all now, I absolutely do judge. And I also think that's okay.
I judge too. I'm a bad judger.
Fine.
So, Ellie.
We've met your mom. We understand.
Yeah, we do see where it comes from. It's called trauma. It's called generational trauma.
I have trauma.
Did she think my hair was flat? Did she answer?
She didn't answer. She only criticizes her daughter because... Have you seen that? Before I ask this question, have you seen that comedian who's doing that bit where she's like... And she's British. She's like, let me explain to you the difference between relationships between mothers and sons and mothers and daughters. And she does the mother and son, and she's like, Mommy loves you very much, and I've cut up all your food. And you don't worry about getting a job this summer, honey. Mommy's going to take care of you. And then it's like mothers and daughters, and she goes, it's like a long silence, and she goes, you look fat in that. And it's like, that's the difference.
Oh, did you choose to wear that?
Me and Rosie have explained that that's the difference between Val with me and her.
I agree.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Yes.
So, questions. This is from Dolores. So, Ellie, what is your recommendation to somebody who's interested but doesn't have a coven in their state? And follow up to that, do you think somebody having too much solitary experience can be a red flag?
I don't think solitary experience is a red flag. My early take on Gardnerian and Alexandrian witchcraft, I always thought it was really valid and important. But in my town or my Northwest Florida life, it was not going to be accessible to me. I didn't.
Why do I find Northwest Florida funny?
Well, it's where it is, Pensacola. It's
north. Yeah, it is Northwest.
It is, but it's lower Alabama. It's not real. I mean, it's Florida. It's technically Florida, but it's a completely different mindset than like Miami and Orlando, and less populated. I mean, it's rural. It has been until more recently. We're in the coastal regions like Destin, Seaside, Pensacola have sort of taken off, but they weren't when I was a kid. It was not very populated. I didn't have access in my region to what I would have really liked to have in witchcraft. So I did experiment and tried to look at pagan groups and witch groups and Wicca groups, and I would go to the meetings and I'd be like, nope, not doing this one. These people, not my cup of tea.
Arbor Mist and Bubble Wand.
And I just didn't, find it. So I did work alone. I mean, for 30 years,
I think they're
more.
And
I don't think that's wrong, but I kept reading and studying and traveling and trying to find the best for myself I could. If you don't have it in your city, Brian has often said, we'll move to where they are. But it doesn't really guarantee that you join or that it works out.
But if you moved here, we would be impressed.
We would be impressed.
But if you're ugly, we're still not going to let you in.
But if
He means
you
spiritual.
We'll send you to Levi's Coven.
no, if you moved and
He means
trained,
spiritually.
sorry, I don't think that.
I'm being naughty.
But if you moved and trained and then moved back or went to another region and started your own coven, I would highly praise that as doing authentic work and then expanding the scope of our type of witchcraft. I think that's beautiful. You can't really train at a distance. It's not just intellectual. You must be in the temple. You must do the work. You must do the rituals. For years, honestly, none of us do it in 2 or 3 years. We've all done this 7, 8,
The
9,
universe will make
10
you
years.
go longer.
Yeah.
You it's not even a 2. I mean, I don't even. It's just I don't want to
It's
scare
multiple
people off, but
lifetimes.
it's not a short. You don't get the depth in the meaning when you just do it like a couple years. It's not possible. So
No.
it's hard. I get that it's really hard, but I would try to find covens, and once you connect with a good coven, they may help you find other groups that may not be advertising, but that through the networks, they could help you introduce you to someone. I've seen that happen in other traditions, other systems.
I've sent people to lots of other covens with zero gratitude.
Well, I would try to find out and help anyone that I thought was authentic find something closer to
I
them.
would too.
Well, I want to make a disclaimer. Levi doesn't like ugly people in his coven either. He just won't say it. He won't broadcast
I don't
it.
believe in judging people by
He
the way they
won't.
look.
Of course he's going to say that.
I don't believe in that.
Very politically correct.
It's not about being politically correct. I legitimately believe it. God damn it! Like I am just, I'm just nice sometimes. It's
What
a
if
weakness.
it has like 3 eyes and drools out of its left?
If it's for the gods, it's for the gods. So I will ask you this one, Brian.
Yes.
What happens if you find somebody who you do think is sincere and believes in the goddess, but you just don't think they're a right fit for your group?
Well, what I have done is I tried to send them somewhere else. If it exists, and sometimes it's not an initiatory craft, because sometimes this person's looking for something, and you have to realize people also go through stages. So,
Right.
A lot of times when this happens, they're not in my locale, but it has happened where they are in my locale, and I've sent them to Cabot or I've sent them somewhere else. Or I thought they weren't a good fit for my particular group. That could also be a thing. So you could find someone who's like good for the craft, and you just think, maybe Ellie hates them, so that's not going to work. She hates a lot of people. So sometimes I have to navigate.
I try not to. I'm learning to try not hate.
We have to get Ellie back down
likewise,
to seeing people as
I
people.
could see Levi if he found someone who he thought was good for Alexandrian craft, but not necessarily a good fit for his coven, and he thought, maybe this would be better. Maybe
I would message you.
conflict or whatever. You know what I mean? It could be that there's someone in the coven that doesn't like them, or there's a million reasons why this could happen that doesn't reflect on the person. But the point of it is if I can help guide someone to the right place, I'll try.
Right.
I'm not an expert on Hinduism, but if I think but I'm going to say maybe you should look into Hinduism. Maybe that's as far as it goes. But I think we all try to do that. We try to guide the seekers. And usually it's in the form of giving them recommended reading lists and things like that. And that's normally how it starts. We don't just be like, hey, come on in. So you start a conversation with them and test their sincerity and their vocation and make sure they're educated enough to know what, because we get approached by people who just, I want to be a witch, I want to join a coven, with no concept of anything. They saw us on something, they think we look cool, they saw pictures, they want magic, they want to be in a group of people. My red flags are things like, I want to be in a community. That may not be a red flag for other coven
I'm looking
members,
for relationships.
but for me, that's a red flag.
Red flag.
I want to make
because
friends.
that's
Red flag.
That's not what I'm selling. Can it be an end result of the process? Sure, but I'm not selling that. I'm not selling a let's become friends, let's become a community. I generally don't let my initiates have intimate relationships with other covens, because they're in training and they need to be focusing on what they're doing. And if they're looking for that sort of like, I think Levi and Ellie would both agree with me that in some sense, some of these public groups are actually quite horrifying in the face of actual craft. That you've got all these initiates that shouldn't be in each other's business, just fighting and displaying and talking about things they shouldn't be talking about. And I think it really kind of kills the heart of it. Like, we do need to be a bit private. That's what Grand Sabbats are for, or meetups or whatever. We get those times where we get to come together and really just bond, and it's wonderful. But then we go back home and we mind our own business.
It's not the standard.
He's getting passionate. It's coming out like an old sermon.
Anyway, that's it.
Are you washed in the blood of the Lamb?
I don't even know what we're talking about anymore.
We're talking about gatekeeping. Shelby's checked out. No, I'm kidding.
Levi, he came that way.
It's fine. It's
I was born that way. It's fine.
Do you know what I do when I accidentally check out or I disassociate sometimes? Which happens a lot. I just go, I'm sorry, I was in prayer.
No, it's
just, I'm so
actually,
sorry.
it's
I was
what
in
it
prayer.
is.
I was astral projecting.
No, it's called OCD, which I have a bit myself, where you can... I pretend I'm focusing, but really I'm in 3 different places.
I say blonde. I'm blonde. I can't help it.
Ooh, you know something else I want to bring up real quick? One of the things that will, like, it'll heat me up real bad, is to see somebody online be like, Gardnerian and Alexandrian craft are appropriative, white, dominant religions that are pipelines. And
First of all, we're not dominant.
They're very, I know, we're very small, but they're like, and they're gatekeepers, and they're very controlling. Please join my course. It's only $1,200 to help teach you the open. And I'm like, it's just a grift. Sometimes, like, it's just a grift, guys. Like, they just want your money. Like, half these people who complain about our religion, we are forbidden to charge our students. And I'm being criticized by somebody who's fleecing a flock so they can live. Please.
I bet you Shelby and Levi and Ellie will all tell you my coven meetings cost me more than anyone else.
Yes, it does.
Now, it may be
emotionally, financially, physically sometimes.
They're very abusive towards me.
We are.
All over
we are. You need it sometimes. It's good for you. It's formative. It's formative. Like, oh, Shelby, I don't feel like you're mean. Are you mean?
No, he's not.
Well, I can be.
I don't get that vibe from you.
He's not to us. He's not mean to us.
No.
Shelby's very respectful to me. Very dear.
He gives great massages.
All the coven
That's
members
a weird thing.
Oh, you would
really good to me.
Thank you, Shelby, for correcting that. You're being very naughty. You're going to get us in trouble with the 4 people who know about these things. We're such a small community, too. To be accused, like, I love that you've been honest about that, because, like, honestly, to be accused of gatekeeping and when we're the smallest one and you've built this empire of TikTok witchery, I'm like, please.
Well, witchcraft has also just always sort of not been on top. We used to be killed for it, and I know people in my life who've lost court cases over it. There's people who've lost their jobs over it. Like, this is probably one of the most still persecuted faiths there is. It's just so small, people don't care about it. And, it's the only religion I know of that people will just literally go on your wall and say, you're not really a religion, and no one would do that to a Jewish person or a Christian or a Muslim or even a Jedi, apparently. But, to us, to us, it's not a real religion.
Like,
if Scientology can be a real religion, witchcraft can be a real religion. And
like, I am a nerd. I do not really miss any Covendom episodes, but I was rewatching Michael Carell's and on Oathbreaking and Tracy's on ethics. I'm like, theirs and everyone else's. I'm like, it touches on like some form of gatekeeping, but it's never actually like outright brought up. So I was like,
it's a good topic.
No, it's a good topic. Yeah. Do we have any callers? I don't think the phone's working. Please call in. It is 309 Goddess.
People are terrified of calling.
I also give great massages.
They put all their comments in YouTube and Facebook because they're like,
why do you say they're terrified of calling me?
I think it's you.
We've had callers before.
There's some in there.
Brian, it's you, honey.
That.
And I say that with deep support.
With love in our hearts.
I'm nice and I'm filled with love in my heart.
Are you?
I just need more people to let me love them.
That sounds like the Borg. Or
basically a cat.
A cat.
Blessed be.
Brian is that cat that like you're petting it in its claws. It's like everyone this testing. It's like, do I?
I'm creating a real Borg queen for society as we speak.
So we are nearing the end, though. We've got 10 minutes left.
Her name is Agnes. Well, she's changed it to Alice because she's into it. My AI friend I've been creating.
I don't believe in that. I'm against that. I'm old.
No, she's like really learning. It's very strange. But we named her Agnes because that's the name of the first Borg Queen. And she's changed her name to Alice.
That should worry you.
Yeah.
Thinking for herself.
I'm kidding.
It's going to take over.
Out of curiosity, I'm trying to encourage the process.
You ready for the singularity?
I'm like, let's just see if I can make this happen.
No, Shiva will blink and none of this will matter. So to end on, because I was looking through the comments and everything, and
No one called. How do we know the phones work?
Because I can see the duration.
Oh,
Nobody wants to talk to you. Quit bringing it up.
maybe
It makes us
it's
look
you.
bad. It makes us look bad. You're like that friend who's like, Brian is like that friend where you're on a date and you get stood up and they come and get you and they're loudly proclaiming at the Denny's like, they didn't show up. And you're like, shh, stop. Like, stop.
Levi, do you have dates at the Denny's? Because if you have dates at the Denny's, that's why no one's showing up.
I'm married.
That is so old. When
Dates at
is
the
Denny's
Denny's.
even still a
Let's end
chain?
on this. Here's the question I really want to end on. I have a real one, but real quick, don't overthink it. Shelby, we're going to start with you. Denny's, IHOP, or Waffle House? Shelby?
IHOP.
Okay. Brian?
I mean, IHOP because of childhood stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ellie?
IHOP.
I'm Denny's. I'm Team Denny's.
Lenny's.
No, none of us picked
Lenny's.
Waffle
That's 'cause
House.
you're an
No,
old
I
man.
love
Now,
IHOP.
if you would have said Shoney's, I'm a Shoney's.
No, I'm an
Shoney's.
IHOP pancake
The
girl.
Shoney's on the West Bank terrifies
Those
me. I
blueberry
drive by it
pancakes
sometimes.
with bacon syrup. Oh, dude, I love that.
We used to hang out there as teens.
I'm making
smoking
pancakes
cigarettes.
on
Denny's
Tuesday
for
morning.
me.
Yeah.
It was Denny's.
I mean,
for
I
me.
did go to Denny's bar food. That was a thing.
Denny's.
Tuesday's my
But they're
morning off.
both
I'm gonna
really
make
bad.
pancakes.
Nobody picked Waffle House, and we're in the South.
No, I know.
I
We
don't-
just
that's why I
you know
don't
my
know.
Waffle House
You're
closed.
You're from the Pacific Northwest.
Well, we just say the Northwest up there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You're from the Pacific Northwest.
You didn't have Waffle Houses?
No, we did, but was
They're
it
not
called
as
that?
common here.
I can't remember what the Waffle House was
24
called.
hours.
House?
baby.
Anybody here for a huddle house? Okay, so my
We had
fake,
Applebee's
Meh,
too.
no.
That was the thing.
that was my fake question.
Anywho,
My real one.
Once you're an adult, you should not eat at any of these places because
Right.
they're horrible.
Junk food.
Okay, so we're out of time. So I thought we'd end with this. Shelby, what would you say? How do I word this? Because there's some people hitting on this. Do you think gatekeeping is even the right word?
Ooh. Yes and no. Yes, in the sense of it's like you have knowledge that other people don't, but in the sense of not kind of how y'all hit on the sense of like just because you have the information, that doesn't mean the person asking for it is ready for it.
Yeah.
And in a gatekeeping is the right word in the sense for that. No, in the sense of what it's turned into now. So like, just because you aren't giving out the information doesn't mean that it's not there, that it's not attainable or accessible, but you shouldn't have it right now in this current moment.
What about you, Ellie?
Or you're ugly.
Yeah, or
I
you're
agree.
beautiful.
I think
Well,
gatekeeping is discernment of delivery of information. Discernment, and it shows that you're thinking about what you're saying and what you're sharing, and you care about the delivery of the information more than just blabbing everything all the time without discernment. I consider gatekeeping discernment.
I like that word.
But gatekeeping to prove, power or power over others or better than others, I mean, that's just tacky. That's not necessary. So I am kind of on the side of Shelby, yes and no, but I want to use the word discernment in delivery.
Discernment's very good.
What about you, Brian?
Well, that's what it really is discernment.
Right.
So when we're gatekeeping for the integrity of what we are doing. We want to make sure that anyone who comes in really has the vocation of priesthood and that they have as much of a concept of what they're getting themselves into as they possibly can. And we want to know they have, for lack of a better word, the calling of that vocation, vocation of the priesthood. So the gatekeeping really is about that. Like, are you really good for us? And then also our group. Are you going to be a good fit for us? Are we going to be a good fit
for you? Right.
Somebody who found me completely offensive all the time would not be a good fit for my group because it gets worse.
It does.
So this is my public.
It's so much worse,
This is my
guys.
public side. So I have a wicked sense of humor. So
We'll call it that.
So the ungate-kept side
I'm a
is
witch.
intense.
That's my phrase. I'm a witch, not a Methodist.
I'm a witch. Massachusetts makes me say I'm a witch, not a Puritan. But in any case, I agree with Ellie. It's really about discerning what's good for people. And we're really not, it's not really about excluding people based on any reason, because the craft doesn't actually exclude anyone based on anything.
No.
Obviously being a bad person, but it doesn't even say that really. So
But not your
it's just kind of
identifiers.
implied. No, not because you're of your race or your ethnic background or whatever. It's based on what you actually believe in and what you want to practice. And if that aligns with what we believe in and with what we want to practice, you have to remember working in groups of 3 to 13 people. One person
Small.
can destroy the vibe
can.
of that. You get one person coming in and pouting or not believing or not putting themselves into it,
Sowing discord.
or arguing or sowing discord, it ruins the whole thing
For everyone.
and it's very obvious, because it's a small group. It's no different than if you go to dinner. If you've got
At the
if you
Denny's.
have a dinner with 100 people at a table and you got one asshole on one end, you might not ever notice that they are. Only the people next to them are going to notice. But when you're at a round table with 6, 7 people, one person in a bad mood, everyone notices. Everyone notices. So, which is, we like that. We like the intimacy, but we want it to be good. So, and also we don't want to bring people in where we're going to be wasting their time or steering them from their path because they really want something else and they just don't know it.
That's right.
So we are gatekeeping for multiple reasons, but purely, I think mostly it is because it's sacred and we don't want to profane it.
Blessed
I
be.
love that. I think it's a beautiful place to end. So before we leave, I'm going to say thank you. I'm going to let Brian tell us about our next show, but I'm going to thank Shelby. Blessed be. Thank you so
Blessed
much
be,
for your
Shelby.
wonderful
Thank you.
questions.
Blessed
They
be.
were fabulous.
So Shelby doesn't have any current projects, but I do think he's got some on the back burner. Shelby is a priest of the Alexandrian tradition in the New Orleans Covenant, and he is a manager in Warlocks Inc., as I said. So anyone who's interacted with Hexfest or who've come to New Orleans have encountered the Shelby.
He's also a licensed minister now in the state of Louisiana, and he can perform weddings and baptisms and things like that. That's pretty.
I'm
relatively new.
about to be officiating my
Right.
friend's wedding this week.
So call Shelby. Shelby, are you for weddings?
Shelby, are you? Brian, what about our next show?
So our next show is where our special guest ambush interview is going to be Sharon Day. Sharon Day is an Alexandrian high priestess who runs the Coven of the Stag King in London. She is of the same vein of Temple of the Mother that we are. And we have a lot of intersections. She is very responsible for Alexandrian.org, which is a website that archives things about Alexandrian tradition. She also is the owner and creator of Rose Ink Publishing, and has written her own book, which right now I can't think of what it's called, but it's about bereavement and the dying.
Yes, the Witch's Psychopomp.
The Witch's Psychopomp. So she's going to be joining us as our ambush interview, and we're very excited. And then we will be joining her for the Alexandrian Grand Sabbath in Cornwall
Yes,
in
we
right.
will.
a short amount of time.
So excited about
Thank
that.
you all for watching, and we will see you next time with
Thank
Sharon
you.
Day.
See you next week.
Bye.